Hey, what's going on everyone? It is Dennis here. So I went out and did something kind of weird. I went out and bought a 7-year-old camera. I bought the Sony A5100, a camera that was released back in 2014. Wow, that was a long time ago. What else was going on in 2014?
Pharrell, I can't talk to you without starting with the hat.
Okay.
It's a new hat, it's a new shade. Is it Vivienne Westwood again?
Yeah, it's a different color.
I don't watch the news because I'm a kid, and apparently every time, you're spinning around, and apparently every time you get dizzy, and apparently I'm scared half to death.
All right, so maybe 2014 wasn't the greatest year, but I wanted to see how this 7-year-old camera from 2014 stacks up today in 2021. I want to see how it'll function as a studio camera and also as a vlogging camera. Oh, and I forgot to mention, it's got a flip-up screen. Pretty cool. All right, so let's get into it, guys. All right, welcome back to the channel, guys. So, like I said in the introduction, I did buy a Sony A5100, a camera that was released back in 2014, making it 7 years old. And you're probably thinking, why the heck did you do that? For those of you that watch my channel, you know that my primary camera that I use to film my YouTube videos, specifically in a setting like this where I'm in the studio or outside doing a talking head type video, I use the Sony A6400, which is what I'm recording on right now, and I use it with the Sigma 16mm f1.4 lens. Awesome setup, amazing camera, amazing lens. Can't say enough good things about it. Now, the only thing is I've had this camera and lens set up for quite a while now. Over the past few years, I've actually acquired a few lenses, I don't know if you can see, and so I wanted a way to talk about these lenses and talk about this camera while having it with me in the frame, kind of like this, but I don't have a camera to actually do that with. Now, I do have a GoPro Hero 9 I could record with, and I've actually used this as a studio type camera, and it functioned pretty well. Now, with me talking about APS-C sensors and cameras, along with the E-mount lenses that you can throw onto it, trying to get the best image quality, it just didn't feel right using a GoPro to record those type of videos. So I wanted some type of secondary camera, was basically the main reason why I decided to buy the A5100. So there were 5 requirements that I had to have in a secondary camera body to my A6400. Now let's go over them and why I decided to pick this. Now the first one was I wanted a camera body that would work with all of my Sony and Sigma lenses, as you can see in the back there. I wanted a camera system that would work with that. So obviously the Sony A5100 is an APS-C camera that can take E-mount lenses, so we're good. The second requirement would have to be very good autofocus, and obviously Sony is known for having like the top of the line autofocus. With the Sony A6400, we have a badass autofocus system. It is a hybrid 425 phase detect and contrast autofocus. Now with the Sony A5100, it's the same hybrid autofocus system, it's just older. So we don't have the 425 phase detect and contrast autofocus. We have 179 phase detect, and I think it's 25 contrast autofocus points. So it's not quite as fast as the Sony A6400, but it's still pretty badass. I think at the time, 2014, this was probably like the top of the line autofocus. They say it can capture autofocus at 0.07 seconds. This is still very capable and very powerful. Now the third requirement was I need a flip up screen. Now with someone like me that spends the majority of their time in front of the camera, talking to the camera or also vlogging, I need cameras that have front-facing screens. The A6400 has a front-facing screen, and also my GoPro, which is my vlogging camera, also has a front-facing screen. So with me using this as a secondary camera, throwing it on the ring light just like what I'm doing now, I need to be able to see and frame up my shot and make sure my composition's okay, make sure nothing weird is going on in the background. A front-facing screen is very, very important. If I want to actually use this for vlogging, front-facing screen is a must. So yeah. The fourth requirement was I have to have good image quality. This can go both ways in either video and photo. So obviously I would be using this for video, and the elephant in the room. What the heck? No, you don't need an actual elephant. It's a saying, it's an expression. Go away. Take the elephant out. All right, so the elephant in the room is this shoots up to 1080p, 60 frames per second, 30 frames per second, and 24 frames per second. So most people are gonna say, well, it doesn't shoot 4K. What the hell? That's stupid. Why would you buy an old camera that doesn't shoot 4K? Well, the majority of my videos, like this, where I'm in the studio, I'm not shooting 4K. I'm shooting 1080p, either 60 frames per second or 30 frames per second, and it looks fine. If you shoot at 1080p with your Sony A6400 or whatever A6000, A5000 series camera and throw a Sigma 16mm or 30mm f1.4 prime lens on there, the image looks like it's 4K. It looks like it's full frame. These are magic, wizard-like lenses that make your footage look amazing. So yeah, and also I don't upload in 4K anyways. I upload in 1080p, so I don't need 4K. Now with this being a secondary camera to my Sony A6400, where it's gonna be in the place of this on the ring light using a Sigma lens most likely, I'm gonna be shooting at 30 frames per second. I don't need anything faster than 60 frames per second when I'm in the studio. What am I recording? Someone doing backflips? No, I'm just sitting here talking to the camera. So needing 120 frames per second for something like this makes no sense. So the resolution and frame rates on this camera are decent enough for me, especially for an inexpensive, budget-friendly B cam. Yes, please. Now the other thing is for photos. So obviously with the lens capabilities of this camera and the nice, super fast autofocus, I'm gonna be using this for photos as well. For image quality, the Sony A6400 and the rest of the A6000 lineup is a 24.3 megapixel sensor. I wanted something that could produce nice, crisp, clean images in photography, and with this being a 24.3 megapixel camera, we are good. The fifth requirement was it had to be budget friendly. I had a limitation of $500 that I wanted to spend. I didn't really want to spend that much for a secondary camera body, but if need be, I would have spent it. I basically wanted something that would give me the best bang for my buck, the best value, and this ended up being it. I was fortunate enough to find this pre-owned locally for $300 with the kit lens, the 16-50 kit lens. So very fortunate to find it at that price. I think with COVID and with people doing Zoom calls and people starting to stream, this has been a very popular camera recently because it's budget friendly. Check out your local Craigslist or even OfferUp or even eBay. But yeah, so you should be looking about $300 to maybe $400 something dollars. So this came out victorious over the other possible candidates for a secondary B camera to my Sony A6400, and so far I am super happy with it. Okay, so what are we working with here? So specs, let's talk about specs. The Sony A5100 is an interchangeable lens camera that takes Sony's E-mount lenses. It has a 24.3 megapixel APS-C size sensor. For video, it can shoot 1080p up to 60 frames per second. It has Sony's hybrid autofocus system, so it has 179 phase detect autofocus points, as well as 25 contrast autofocus points. The Sony A5100 has blazing fast autofocus, and it also has face tracking to keep you in focus while you're vlogging. Yay! It can also face track while wearing a mask. It can grab focus as quickly as 0.07 seconds. It has two built-in stereo microphones that give you crisp, clear sound. It has a 3-inch flip-up screen that is perfect for selfies and for vlogging. The A5100 has a variety of picture effects and creative styles for you to choose from.
It has a battery life of approximately 400 photo shots or 75 minutes of recorded video. The A5100 has the capability to download apps from the Play Memories store. The A5100 has a built-in flash for when you want to take photos in low light. The 3-inch flip screen is also touch activated, so it allows you to touch to focus and touch to activate shutter. The A5100 has a built-in panoramic mode that allows you to get sweeping photos of your surroundings. Have you ever tried to vlog like this? The 16-50 kit lens of the Sony A5100 has built-in optical steady shot, so it'll help smooth out your shots.
All right, so what I want to do now is actually swap cameras. So we have been shooting on the Sony A6400 with the Sigma 16mm f1.4 lens, and I want to swap it out with the Sony A5100. And first we'll swap it out with the kit lens, just so you can kind of see how this setup will look like right out of the box. And then I'll throw the Sigma on there just to show how good of an image quality you can get from this little camera. So ready? 1, 2, 3, go. All right, so we are now shooting with the Sony A5100 with the 16-50mm kit lens. How does it look, guys? Look pretty decent? Now we are shooting at f3.5, which is the widest aperture of this lens. And I mean, I would say for right out of the box, this looks pretty good. I mean, we are using the autofocus, so locked onto there. I'd say it's pretty good. We are shooting at 1080p, 60 frames per second. Same setting that I was using on the Sony A6400 with the Sigma 16. So image quality is probably not gonna be as good because we're not using a Sigma Prime, but same exact settings, should look pretty decent. So I am recording audio externally. I'm actually recording on the A6400 still and using my Rode Wireless Go to record the audio. That's what you're hearing right now. So let's actually switch over to the Sony A5100. Okay, so now what you're hearing is the internal microphones of the Sony A5100. Keep in mind these are stereo microphones. They should be pretty crisp and clear. Sony does a really good job of using some high quality stereo mics in their camera bodies, but with it being stereo, it's probably picking up some echo in this room, in the studio. So, I mean, if you're just starting out, this would probably be fine. Or if you have the time and the means to kind of soundproof your room, this might sound a little bit better. Like I said, if you were to use this for vlogging, this would be perfectly fine. This is what it sounds like internally with the built-in microphones, and let's switch back to the Rode Wireless Go. All right, so audio currently is coming from the Rode Wireless Go. So how does this look? I think this looks pretty decent. I've actually shot quite a few of my tutorials. Some of my most viewed videos are actually shot with this on the 6400, and the lens did great. I mean, it did what it was supposed to do, so you can't really complain. But if you're just starting out, this looks fine. So what I want to do now is actually swap out the lens. So we have been shooting on the 16-50 on the A5100. Let's put the Sigma lens on here and let's see how it looks. 1, 2, 3. All right, so we are now on the Sony A5100 with the Sigma 16mm f1.4 prime lens. How are we looking, guys? We'll be looking pretty good. We are shooting at f1.4. When we were shooting with the 16-50, it was at 3.5 because that is the fastest, the widest you can go on that lens. But the Sigma is gonna kill it with the bokeh. Look at the lava lamp back there. Look at that background. Whew. This is the Sony A5100. This is the Sony A6400. You can see the kit lens on there, the 16-50. So, wow, this looks nice. Wow, pretty impressive. Yeah, it looks good. All right, so we know how this looks in the studio. Let's take this out for a vlogging test and let's see how it functions. All right, I'll meet you guys outside.
Hey, what's going on, guys? We are currently recording on the Sony A5100 with the 16-50mm kit lens, doing a little bit of a vlogging test here with the camera. Now, I'm not sure if I actually mentioned this while we're in the studio, but the Sony A5100 does not have any IBIS or in-body image stabilization. So any type of stabilization, you're gonna have to rely on optically stabilized lenses, or OSS.
So the 16-50mm kit lens actually does have OSS, so it'll help smooth out some of your shots.
So another thing that you can do, since the camera body of the A5100 does not have IBIS or in-body image stabilization, is you can actually use a gimbal to stabilize your shot. We're shooting at 16mm, and we do have a 1.5 crop in the Sony A5100. So we're shooting at a full frame equivalent of 24mm. Now some people might say that this is not wide enough for vlogging, which I disagree, because you can still get me and you can still get whatever is going on in the background. I'm at the park. So I would say that 16mm or 24mm full frame equivalent would probably be the bare minimum you'd want to use as a vlogging lens. Any more zoomed in, like 18mm would be 27mm full frame equivalent, would be a little too tight. You end up looking something like this, and it pretty much is just your head taking up the majority of the shot. So 16mm, I'd say, is at least what you want. So what I'm gonna do is actually throw a different lens on here just so we can actually see how wide we can go with a system like this. So 1, 2, 3. Whoa! I think I fooled you. We're at the same focal length. So this was 16mm. This was exactly the same focal length we were recording at with the 16-50, but check this out. Whoa! Look at that. Look how much more we can see in the frame. Crazy.
All right, so what I'm shooting with right now is the Sony 10 to 18mm wide angle lens. This is probably my favorite lens.
It's basically the perfect lens if you want to use your APS-C camera for vlogging. It not only is super wide at 10mm or 15mm equivalent, you can also zoom in to 18mm, which is what, 27mm equivalent. So you have a nice zoom range there. It does have autofocus, and it does have optical steady shot.
All right, so the Sony A5100. What do I think about this camera? Well, wow, what happened? Oh my God. Okay, so the wind is picking up and my allergies are really starting to get to me, so we are gonna head back to the studio to finish out this video. All right, so at the end of the day, what do I think about the Sony A5100? To be honest, I actually really like this camera. Considering that it is 7 years old from 2014, I still think it is a badass of a camera. You have a interchangeable lens camera system that can take APS-C E-mount lenses. It has a pop-up flash, it has a flip-up screen, it has a nice grip, sturdy feel to it. It can shoot 1080p up to 60 frames per second at 50 megabits, full HD. I love that it's 24.3 megapixels. I love that it has Sony's amazing hybrid autofocus. It has all of the basic features that I was looking for as a secondary or B camera to my Sony A6400. It's an overall really good camera. I mean, for someone that is a beginner that wants to get a interchangeable lens camera and you want to get away from shooting with your phone or like a little point and shoot, you want to be able to get creative with the different types of lenses you can use, this would definitely be a worthy camera to look into. I think it's perfect for that. For someone just getting started on YouTube or photography or any type of video content, I think the Sony A51 is going to be amazing. For someone that is wanting to use this for vlogging, that flip-up screen, ooh, I mean, amazing. Now, every camera can't be perfect, and especially with this one being older, there are some caveats that you have to be aware of if you decide to buy this camera. Now, the first one is going to be that it doesn't have 4K. Like I said before, this is gonna be a B camera for me. I normally don't even shoot 4K on my A6400 anyways,
So for me, not having 4K in this camera is not terrible. For the price, I think it's acceptable for this to not have 4K. The second thing is gonna be that there is no electronic viewfinder on the back, so you can't take your photos like this, or you can't film your videos like this. If you're in a super bright setting, if the sun is very, very bright, you have to rely on this screen. It's a pretty bright screen. I have it at the brightest setting at all times just because I really like to see the image on the screen super bright, so that way I can see everything. It's fine. I mean, the amount of time that I used it out and about today, vlogging and even recording with it, I didn't have an issue with the sun. But yeah, just be mindful that there is no electronic viewfinder. The third thing is that there is no microphone jack in this camera. So you're basically stuck with the internal microphones of the camera. And like we saw earlier today when I was vlogging with it and also doing tests here in the studio, the stereo microphones, the in-body microphones, are actually pretty decent. They sound pretty good. For someone that's just getting started on YouTube, I think they're perfectly fine. For someone that's gonna be really close to the camera, it's gonna be fine. If you're able to kind of dampen some of the echoey parts of your room or wherever you're going to be filming, I think it should be fine. For me, it's not going to be that big of an issue because I do have ways of recording external audio, either with a Rode Wireless Go, a Tascam recorder, or recording with my Blue Yeti hooked up to an iPad. There's different ways that I've been able to record audio externally. I would just have to sync up the audio in post when I go to edit the video. So if you don't mind that extra step, I feel like this would perfectly be fine if you want to use it as a studio camera. I still think the built-in microphones are awesome. Yeah, just keep in mind that there is no mic jack. Okay, so the fourth thing is going to be the overheating of the Sony A5100. It is definitely a thing. It's definitely an issue. I've had it happen to me twice. Now, I don't think it's as bad as everyone else claims it to be. I've read reviews and comments saying that this thing will record for 5 minutes, it overheats, and then shuts off. I've actually been fortunate enough to have it record a full 30 minutes. Sometimes it'll give me a high temp warning around 20 minutes in. Sometimes it won't give me a high temp warning at all. But once I hit record a second time and let it record, 5 minutes in, it will overheat and stop recording. So I don't know if that's what they're referring to. They always make it seem like, oh, this is my first recording, I hit record, and it overheats after 5 minutes. That's not been the case for me. It'll always allow me to record 30 minutes, and then it's usually during the second recording, I'll hit record, 5 minutes in, it'll overheat and shut off. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely an issue, but I would say if you are the type of person that is gonna be using this as your primary camera, and you are gonna do shorter takes, like maybe 5 to 10 minute takes, and then let the camera rest, look at your notes, go back and record again, I think you'll be fine. Or if you're the type of person that vlogs and you only take like short clips here and there throughout your day, I think you're gonna be totally fine. So recording for a full uninterrupted 30 minutes doesn't really seem like how my workflow works. So I don't really see it as an issue. If you intend to use the A5100 as a photography camera, I think you're fine. I don't see this overheating. I don't see it really warming up or heating up the sensor just having it on. So I think if you're gonna be taking photos with this, I think you should be fine. Okay, so those are the only issues I have with the Sony A5100. And I'm not gonna say they're negatives just because of at the price point and the fact that this is a 7-year-old camera. I mean, it's definitely acceptable to have those type of issues. For me, they're not really issues. There are workarounds, or they actually just don't even bother me, but I felt they were important enough for me to share them with you in case you are interested in picking up a Sony A5100. Now, in general, what do I think about this camera? I love this camera. It is awesome, especially for it being an older camera. It's basically a really powerful and versatile beginner's interchangeable lens camera. If you want to get into the Sony APS-C system and utilize some E-mount lenses, I think this is definitely a worthy buy in 2021, and even for years to come. It's still definitely a very valid and versatile and powerful and worthy camera. Great as a beginner camera. For me, it's awesome as a secondary or a B camera. It's also awesome as a vlogging camera. Great as a photography camera. The Sony A5100 has actually seen a resurgence in popularity
because of its very budget-friendly price and the fact that you are able to use it to stream. If you are looking for a streaming camera, that might be something for you to look into as well. I hope I shared enough information with you about the Sony A5100 and helping you make that decision on if this is the right camera for you. All right, so that is gonna do it for today's video, guys. I hope you found it helpful and enjoyable. And if it was, please leave it a like. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. And as always, please think about subscribing. That's gonna do it for today's video, guys. I will see you guys next time. Bye, guys.